All right, everybody. Danielle, good to have you here as well. Trying to get it live on
Hi, guys.
Instagram.
Cody might jump on in like 10 or 15 minutes.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Love to have Cody join us. Okay, cool. We're live on Facebook. I don't know why it doesn't seem to be wanting to work on Instagram today, and I'm not sure. There's something odd going on with this, so I'm going to go back. Update the channel and provide a new stream key, which I did that. Instagram is always the one that's odd for us. Public. Channels, add channels, select Instagram. All right, one more try here. Copy the stream key and put it here for Instagram. Yeah, something's wrong here. Danielle, I don't know if you had already written the message about going off and come back on your computer. That's totally fine. If anyone has joined us already, we're just trying to make sure that we are live across Facebook and Instagram. And at the moment, Instagram's just giving us a little bit of an issue. So we can go back here. Make sure logged in properly on Instagram. Create live video. Office hours. It's odd. Instagram, I think I've told you guys this before, is the only one where you can't have it like set up before. You have to input all the information at the time that you're going live on Instagram. You have to go and like update it and restream. So there's no way to have it be ready to go beforehand. And let me just try and add Instagram as a new channel here. Add channel, Instagram, tugboat.claims, stream key, that one. Let's see if this works. Huh? Looks like it might be working. All right, let's see if this goes live over here on Instagram's platform. Let's see. It is good on Facebook. We need to have a better process for what to talk about when we have nothing to talk about while we're trying to go live.
We got to try and go live when we're not supposed to go live, so we know how it works.
Something like that. Well, it's funny because it's always the same thing, seemingly, with Instagram and its issue of trying to have us go live there. And it's a bummer. Like I would just be like, oh, okay, let's not be live on Instagram, but it's actually where we get the most people dropping in. Try one more time here. I guess the last thing I can try to is to sign out and sign back into Instagram. So I have to go live on Instagram, copy the stream key from that live one, and then after going live, turn it on over here. Let's turn that one off. Turn this one on. Offline. Save here. Sending data. Let's see if it works.
And we had 4 people watching them.
Yeah. All right. So today we're going to talk about some interesting stuff. If you are here already, stick with us. One of the first things that we're going to go through is the way that your insurance company, your insurance adjuster, may be utilizing portions of your policy, endorsements, language from it incorrectly in regards to your claim. We're seeing this specifically in the smoke and wildfire claims, but it happens in claims every day. I'm going to have Chris share some examples of how it happens everywhere as well, or elsewhere as well, rather. All right, and we'll go from there. Copy this one more time. Here. All right, and Chris just drove all the way across the country to Georgia, and he'll be joining us from there. Did you see any wild claims on your way to Georgia, Chris?
Any claims in the wild?
Yeah. Just drive by anything that you're like, oh man.
I mean, all the time when I'm driving, I'm always looking and being like, oh, there's a claim there.
Uh-huh.
Oh, there's something there.
I-20 is full of them for sure.
I was on 40 most of the whole time, so mostly driving through nothing.
All right. Well, I think
I must have drove right past you. Where are you at?
I'm off 10. So you were 2 interstates above me.
Yeah.
2 major interstates.
All right, last try here. I said that already, but I'm going to sign out actually of Instagram and then sign back in. See if that does anything. All right. Use another profile. Rachel, how have things generally been going at Tugboat? Do we feel like the smoke claims are moving forward and in a structured way? Do we feel like they're stalling? Kind of give us a little bit of a general update there.
They're stalling. So people have not completed restoration yet. And restoration, of course, means many different things. So just generally, they're not completed it, but they've received such an underwhelming estimate from their insurance carrier. It's prompted them to get testing done. And with that testing comes a more robust estimate from a vendor of their choosing. But before they can deliver those results to the carrier, people are being told, well, your home is now, we've sufficiently given time. Your home is, if it's not, it should be habitable at this point.
Yeah.
So we're having to like drill down and move rather quickly to kind of stop that process and tell them that we're aiding in the investigation. Our investigation is not over. Yeah. So
Rachel, keep talking through that a little bit more. I have to run and grab my phone. I realized I left it inside my house, outside my office, but talk through a little bit more when an adjuster is pushing someone to go back into their house, right? And saying things are done. What's the impetus of that? Is that more that the cleaning's been done, they feel like that's fine, or that there's some other aspect of it? We also have Cody present in here. Cody, how are we doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Cody Shaver is an attorney, primarily with first-party property claims. Appreciate him joining. He's one of the people that we consult with often. So, Cody, I'm going to let Rachel keep chatting for a second. She's talking about how a lot of the claims that we're supporting kind of feel like they're stalling at the moment, especially the smoke ones. So, Rachel, chat about that for a second. I'm going to grab my phone and I'll be right back.
Yeah. So what we're to expound on what we're saying, what I was saying is that so now the homes have been deemed habitable by the adjuster, who has not been on site probably ever, because the time has passed sufficiently that they should have had their houses cleaned by now. But the policyholders are not feeling comfortable because they're now realizing there's lead exposure, lead dust in their house. And so we're trying to kind of stop. It's a game of whack-a-mole right now. That's kind of what I tell everybody, that they don't know what to do. So they're just trying to hit every single thing. And so we're trying to help them drill down on, we first have to get the adjusters to acknowledge that there's damage. And because you're presenting new information, it restarts the investigation. And so your home it's not habitable yet because you've determined there's additional damage that wasn't found before. So we're just trying to kind of slow it down so we can then speed it back up again. Once damage is accepted, we can move forward again. But the game of whack-a-mole is very real right now in all the smoke claims in Eaton Canyon and Palisades fires. So I really wish I had more to say, but that's really that's really it.
Now, the inquiries that you're getting, are you seeing that the insurance companies are even getting testing done, or are they getting limited testing?
No, policyholders are doing that on their own.
Yeah, that's what's the biggest concern is, the insurance. What I'm seeing is they're just saying, hey, clean walls, clean floor. Hey, you're great. Move back in. Spray some Lysol in your HVAC duct, and everything's great. But without getting proper testing done and finding out what the protocol is to properly clean, they're exposing these people to hazardous components such as lead and arsenic and all these other metals. From the burnt Teslas, the burnt homes. I think some of them are coming. Every single one that I've had tested came back for lead, positive for lead dust, which is a huge issue.
Yeah.
And not one of the protocols that I've seen are coming back for proper protocols for lead cleaning.
Right. That's right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because they're using Xactimate General Clean.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, and a lot of them aren't dealing with the contents. So I always have a running joke in my office that, okay, so you clean the house, but you can't have your contents in there. So I guess you're going to live there. You're just going to lay on the ground, with no clothes, no TV, no bed, just laying staring at the ceiling every day. There's got no contents that are clean.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, I have a few where we went ahead and just got the testing or had the homeowners get the testing completed, came back positive for lead. And now the insurance companies want to come out and inspect. They haven't inspected yet, but now they want to come out. And what has it been? 2 months?
Mm-hmm.
Now they're sending reservation of rights, never asked to inspect, but sending out reservation of rights letters stating they need to inspect. It's like, okay, well, you didn't need 2 months ago. You only need a test now that we found positive for lead. Have these protocols being drawn up. So
yeah, I had a lady that I spoke to today. She has lead paint maybe in her house and had some paint chips, and she's very concerned that they're going to say that possibly the chipped paint is the cause of the lead. And I tried to make her feel as good as I could without obviously being on site, that the lead chips probably aren't present everywhere in the house, maybe just in that one room, and the soot, which was tested and positive for lead in every room.
wow.
I don't think that's going to be it. I don't think that's they're going to be able to prove that one room with some maybe chip paint is the cause of that. But that's
Wow.
I do foresee that as a potential obstacle.
Yeah, that's a huge pain. I'm going to go ahead and go live separately, apparently, on Instagram. Since it's not working, I'm just going to use my phone to do it, which I don't typically prefer to do because in case I get a text. But Cody, I'm going to ask you in a second about some more information on reservation of rights, because actually it's a question I had for you the other day that I didn't have the time to ask. So let's go ahead and set this up to go live here. Office hours. All right. Now let's go ahead and put that on my computer there. People are only going to be able to see me, but they'll be able to hear everybody else. Okay. So we are live on Instagram as well. You just won't see everybody. And I apologize about that. We were trying to share the live as we usually do there through our Restream app, and it just wasn't working today for some reason. So you get to see me, but you'll hear the voices of a few other people as well. So Cody, you mentioned that you're starting to see reservation of rights letters.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a few of those come in now as well, right? For smoke losses, primarily, not for the total losses, obviously. And what help people understand what is a reservation of rights letter and what are the implications of a reservation of rights letter for someone? And the second part of that, I'm actually kind of curious. That's what I wanted to ask you is how serious should someone take a reservation of rights letter? So first explain what it is, then maybe explain how serious someone should take it.
A reservation of rights letter issued by an insured is basically a letter establishing that although the insurance company is investigating the claim, they're still reserving their rights to deny the claim. So it shouldn't be, their investigation should not be construed as, affording coverage. There can't be any reliance on this investigation to you know, concede that there's coverage on the claim. And anytime an insurance company is, you know, protecting their rights and to the detriment of yours, right, you should be concerned. You know, what is the purpose of the reservation of rights? Why am I being sent this? And you know, that's a good question. You know, we all have opinions of why insurance companies will send out different letters and reserve their rights on it. But what we're seeing is, you know, we're getting the testing done. We're getting the protocols from approved vendors of theirs. We always use their approved vendors. And as soon as they get those estimates, they're immediately sending out these reservation of rights. So, you know, we can just speculate of why, you know, they're being sent out. But, you know, I think a lot of it has to do with protecting their rights and just kind of covering the investigation because of, you know, the delay. Now they want to move forward, and now they really have to investigate this claim. We've seen some carriers that are saying, oh, just get us an estimate, or, you know, basing it upon the square footage. Even the cleaning, we've seen some estimates just, you know, asking what the cleaning square footage is and doing it based on that. Or they're not even looking at the properties. They're sending out vendors to go out there. We've got a lot of vendors that are just showing up. So, you know, I think the reservation of rights letters are kind of, you know, tongue in cheek, you know, just to protect the insurance company that now they have to start really investigating this claim. But again, you know, this reservation of rights is basically telling an insured, hey, you may not have coverage. Or, you know, and a true reservation of rights letter should explain to insured exactly what the issue is, right? And
That's what they usually aren't doing, right? They're usually just asserting their rights, and I think it's why it's confusing. So maybe I'll ask a kind of a question in here, because the letter will come and it'll say, we have a right to investigate this claim, essentially is what it's saying. And we reserve our right to investigate this claim. And it's confusing to people because it sounds intense, but people will be like, but I thought you always had a right to investigate my claim. So what is this right that you're now asserting? Like, you always had a right to investigate my claim. And so they get the sense like, oh, I should be a little bit more on guard now. And they should, right? And so is it simply just a signal from the insurance company that they suspect something? And I know it's not the same for every carrier. Some carriers send out reservation of rights letters at the beginning of claims on almost every claim, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of other ones, there's some trigger that makes them do that. And so as you keep talking about it, are there any legal implications that say a claim went to court later? Like, does is it ever pointed back to in a court case and say, oh, a reservation of rights was sent on this date, that means this?
Yeah, what it'll do. So, you know, obviously we're talking about, yes, an insurance company has a right, you know, or insured has a duty to allow an insurance company to investigate a claim. A reservation of rights isn't asserting the right to investigate the claim. They're asserting their rights that the claim might not be covered. So they start saying, yeah, we're going to investigate this, but we're reserving our right that coverage might not be afforded. So in the whole scheme of things, when you're looking at, you know, whether it be the claims process or litigation or anything else, the reservation rights letter often comes up for two reasons. Number one, it's to show that they were acting reasonably and within set forth, and to show that they were keeping the insured apprised of what was going on, and that because of that reservation of rights, that there were questions on the claim, which kind of, you know, gives the insurance company the ability to extend that investigation longer, rather than when they have 40 days to investigate a claim, and then every 30 days after that, they have to send out a status letter stating what they're waiting on and how long they expect it to take. But that reservation of rights letter just helps establish that they're, you know, doing the right thing, and maybe they are, maybe they're not. Again, we can only speculate as to why they're going out. But I will say that what I'm seeing that's wrong on it is, you know, they have a duty to keep the insured apprised. These claims are in SIU, you know, the special investigation, the duty of good faith still applies. Mm-hmm. These reservation of rights letters should be clearly indicating to an insured why the insurance company is reserving their right. Mm-hmm. And that's where it becomes suspicious, because I'm not seeing any factual basis or supporting why this reservation of rights letters are going out. It just says we're reserving our rights, we're issuing this reservation of rights letter, and here's the policy language. Okay, what happened in that claim process from a factual basis that prompted the insurance company to take a step back? And when you see this reservation of rights letter, you can look at it in simplest form as the insurance company stepping back and saying, okay, everything's going to be paused right now, and we're going to reevaluate, and we're going to, a lot of times I'm seeing it, the reservation of rights letter process, they're being switched to maybe an inside adjuster as opposed to an independent adjuster, or I'm getting a field adjuster assigned to it. And, so it's kind of showing that the investigation is going in a different way. Maybe it's going in a positive way, but maybe it's going into a negative. And again, we go back to the insurance company is not informing or keeping the insured informed as to why this is going to a reservation of rights. So we don't know, is it a good thing? Is this claim going to get back on track and be investigated properly? Or is this a bad thing where the insurance company is saying, hey, and this is a hypothetical, saying, hey, we received your estimate and it's 10 times what we think it should be. So we're going to start, really crossing our T's and dotting our I's. And we see that when, even outside of insurance, I mean, it's not a reservation of rights letter, but, we'll see someone or an entity that's liable for something, and they say, go ahead and just get us an estimate, we'll take care of it. And then the estimate that they receive is, 10 times what they think it's supposed to be.
Yep.
And, the entity that's going to be paying this bill because they've admitted fault, now they take a step back and say, wait a minute, now we don't even know if we're liable.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that's a function. That's a common function across claims, meaning like we see the way that we'll see it is something will be approved in scope until they see the price of it, right? Like, well, yeah, we'll replace all the continuous flooring, and you go get an independent report on the floor, and they find out, oh my gosh, for some reason this floor costs $18 per square foot. They'll be like, well, maybe we don't actually owe for all the flooring here because this is expensive. Like Chris and I are dealing with this on a State Farm one, two State Farm ones, one in Colorado, one here. And when I was on site, we're the public adjusters on the one in Colorado. I was on site with the adjuster, and the vendor that State Farm had assigned was saying, when I walked through this inspection with the initial adjuster, so they walked through, had in-floor heating, but the adjuster didn't know that. And they walked through, and the vendor from the insurance company said, hey, all this floor is going to have to come out. And the adjuster's like, yeah, that makes sense. We'll go ahead and approve that. And then the vendor said, I just want you to know also there is in-floor heating that's going to be affected. And the adjuster's like, I'm going to have to send this up for review then and find out. And it's never been approved since then. Yeah. And it was like, and I brought that up to him. I'm like, it's the in-floor heating that made you curious as to, or like decide whether or not they tried to deny that that's what it was, but it clearly was. I'm trying to think what the other one was. Oh, the other one just is a high-end floor at the State Farm one out here.
We have another one right now that they're trying to, that's a denial. And we finally put in all the facts to overturn the denial that are pretty solid. And their response back was, okay, so what's the estimate? And
yeah. What's the estimate? Yeah,
the estimate before they'll tell us if it's approved.
Yeah, before they'll get the full coverage. That was a big one.
Yeah, those facts are great. One of my favorite claims, and this isn't the forum to talk about it, is it has to do with in-floor heating, and it's my favorite claim that I've ever handled because it was just so odd how the claim went. And if we're ever talking a general discussion about claims, I would love to talk about it. The facts are just amazing. It would make you shocked. But the reservation of rights, as you've heard the term CYA, cover your assets. I think that when I remember I came from the insurance side, and that was how we were instructed to tongue-in-cheek send out a reservation of rights letter, was to just make sure that we're protected. And it's to keep an insured informed of all times that, hey, this might not be covered. We're still doing our investigation. Because if there wasn't one done, let's say that hypothetically I'm working on an issue, and if the insurance company led my client to believe in any way that there was coverage, we use the term detrimental reliance all the time, saying, hey, you're investigating this thing, you were doing things and made this client believe that this was going to be covered. So they had a duty to mitigate, and, we kind of try and put it back on the insurance company, who wouldn't? So this is a way for the insurance company to say, hey, don't do anything based on our investigation. I understand them from the positive standpoint of an insurance company. I understand that, like anything else, they can be used as a weapon or a shield, right? And the purpose of them is to shield the insurance company from liability. The only issue I have with these reservation of rights letters being sent out is the timing. So now we're doing the investigation, like Rachel was saying. Hey, the insureds are getting their own testing done with their own protocols. Now they want to reserve their rights, and the fact that they're not saying, so it can lead someone to believe that they're only reserving their rights because of the amount of the loss and the potential exposure, which seems to be accurate from looking at it, and making assumptions. So I'm not an anti-reservation of rights person. I tell insurance companies to send them out all the time, send it out immediately. Like anything, it's what's the intent, what's the purpose, and why now? Why did you force me? Well, I'll tell you, one of the things is, there was that memo that went out from the Department of Insurance, I think on March 7th, about testing and who should pay for the testing. Did you guys see that memo? I'm sure you did.
Yep.
Okay. So it's saying that, hey, you need to pay for testing and you shouldn't place that burden onto the insureds. It's expensive. I mean, someone sent me a proposal the other day for testing, and it was $26,000 in testing. They're asking me if that's fair, and I was like, wow, let me catch my breath. That's a lot of money. But,
we're seeing the ones that are really looking good and like getting a full scope of work and everything, and really good reports. Those are coming out in the 20 to 30K range.
And it really
this was just for testing. This was just to take the test. Is that how much you're seeing the testing for?
Yeah, testing and a report.
$20,000 range.
Yeah, I mean, depending on how many samples they do, because those ones are doing like full destructive testing in every room, cutting holes in the drywall.
Yeah.
And so they're a little overkill. But
I just, who the average homeowner doesn't have that money, and that's always what I'm looking at. They don't have that money, but so yeah, they're getting these testing done, and then they're submitting them, and now we're starting to get these cases moving now that we've got testing done. But I've had some claims where they're saying, hey, get the work done and we'll pay for it. And I'm like, really? So you're just going to pay for it? All right. Well, I don't believe that. I think you need to protect yourself as an insurance company and at least get a proposal first. But then again, we're getting them tested, then getting the proposals, and now we're getting reservation rights letters. Don't know why.
And these things, they should be claim expenses. They should be paid for, not from the policy coverage limits. They are an investigation of the claim. It's like a contract adjuster.
Yeah.
I've had a couple people where they've paid the testing under ALE. Why? Like that doesn't even make sense. Why that one? Why not just do personal property?
Just because it's an easy coverage. They know they're going to pay it out anyways, and it's not going to hurt their reserves essentially.
And one thing is, the reason they pay these things under separate coverages is like ALE and contents. They don't have to name the mortgage company. So there are benefits at the insurance companies. So you look at the advance that the insurance companies are required to pay. They're paying it under contents. Why are they doing that? Because they can pay a client direct.
Yep.
So, there's sure. We can sit and say every negative thing we want about insurance companies, but I don't think they're all bad. I mean, more than all dogs are bad, or good, right? I mean, I've been bitten by enough dogs that I'm questioning some of them, and so I do some defense work and do appraisals for insurance companies, so I see both sides, and I talk to them about it, and even working on with counsel and seeing their points of views and understanding, but. I'm not on and I don't think you guys are either. Trust me, I'm just saying that because you, Chris and Cameron, you guys came from the carrier side.
Yeah.
Right.
No, and we honestly
people on the carrier side.
Yeah. Chris and I, by and large, I enjoyed my job as an independent adjuster, right? Especially for the first part of it. You and I were talking about the other day, like this was 8 years ago when we started. It was a different adjusting world back then. One, you could make more money as an independent adjuster because you weren't real restricted. There wasn't yet this race to the bottom as far as fee schedules went for adjusters. And so it drove a lot of the good adjusters out. But anyways, it's a very good job and there's a lot of good people in it. Certainly that are there working on this stuff. So yeah, we're not of the opinion that insurance companies are all bad. And generally what I'm encouraging people to do, we've talked about it, I think a few weeks ago here, but it's just to look at the incentives in every situation that you have going on in your claim. What's the incentive between you and your contractor and that vendor that the insurance company sent out and you and your adjuster? And a lot of times, if you just ask a few questions, you could figure out, okay, now I understand what the incentives are. Now we can actually move forward. I know that the adjuster is exhausted. He told me about all these files has to handle, and this is how I'm going to be able to help it. Right. I talked to someone on the way home today, as I was driving home from the Palisades, a homeowner called, and she was super suspicious of the vendor that had been assigned by the insurance company because she had asked the insurance company, hey, can you send me a list of vendors that you like? And she's like, then I can call them and you don't have to choose for me. I can actually choose just from your vetted list. And the adjuster said, no. I have to pick one and that person will call you. And she's like, well, which one? And he wouldn't even say. And then finally, someone, I won't say which vendor, but someone from a franchise that we are probably all familiar with shows up at her door and she's like, okay, so it's this one, right? And then, so she didn't get to vet them. And then she asks them while they're there, do you work for me or do you work for your insurance company? And they essentially admitted to her, well, your insurance company is the one that called us to come out. So because a couple days later, of course, they write an estimate. She says, send that estimate to me, not to my insurance company. You're going to be doing work on my house and I will have to sign a contract and work authorization with you. I want to see that estimate. Of course they didn't, right? They sent it straight to the adjuster. She never saw it before it went there. And so all that to say, she was, and she is not someone that was interested in representation before, they're very active and proactive on their claim. They're just trying to cover their bases. And she was completely disenchanted with the process just from that. She's like, it was so clear that there was misaligned incentives here that they were just not interested in resolving, right? And functioning in any way outside of that.
Yeah, some of these vendors, they, like you said, they won't even send the homeowner the scope of work. They're like, nope, it's got to go to the insurance company. I'm not allowed to send it to you. Yeah. And maybe they are, maybe they're not. You know, I'm sure there's some programs that says you can't send it to them, but you know, how could you trust somebody like that? I'm not going to send anything to you.
Allowed.
And looking at
I'm allowed to send it to you. Like the program that the insurance company has may tell them not to, but they're allowed to. Legally, they're allowed to. And if they're coming out to give an estimate for work on your claim, I think legally you are the insurance company will deny up, down, left, and right that it's their vendor. So
I explained to her it's a two-edged sword and both the edges are against you, meaning the one edge is if you hire them, the insurance company is going to say, well, you hired them. If they did something wrong, take it up with them. And then if you don't hire them, the insurance company is going to say, or if you want something from them like information, they're essentially going to say, well, we work for the insurance company, not for you. Right. And those are the two edges of the sword that those both are like on one side, they don't work for you. On the other side, they do. And in neither instance is it helpful to you.
Yeah. And it's crazy. I had a case that I'm working on, Rules of Claim that I'm working on. And the carrier wrote me a letter and said that the windows aren't damaged. So we're denying the damage to the windows. And I said, great, send me your expert report that said there's no damage to the windows. They said, no, we're not sending that to you. It's work product. So I called the vendor. They said, no, we can't send it to you. It's work product. And I'm thinking, so you're denying this damage, right? And the funny part is that the vendor that in question wasn't a window expert. They brought out a window expert. Mm-hmm. And the window expert said, hey, these windows are all damaged. They're all damaged. and so the reports all go back to the carrier. We asked, what's that?
So they brought out a pool cleaner to check the windows? They
brought out, so they brought their vendor, their expert brought out a window guy. they get the report. They said that we aren't entitled to that report, so I got it, and it clearly said that there was damage, like functional damage. The seals were broken from the heat, and so I asked them. I said, "Well, there's damage. You guys say there's no damage. This report, that's fraud, right?" And they said, "Oh no, we didn't pay attention to that report because there was a public adjuster involved, and he influenced the expert." So I'm like, "Well, that's kind of weird. That's kind of the public adjuster's job, saying, hey, what about this? What about this?' and pointing out everything." And so we got a letter from the expert, and the expert says, "No, that's my expert opinion. I would have had that opinion even if he wasn't there." So we send that, and they go, "No, we don't have to give you the report because we disregarded it. We only have to give you reports that we use to evaluate."
Yeah. That one said that the windows are damaged, so we didn't listen to it. So
I said, "Well, you did use it to evaluate because you used it. You looked at it and decided that you needed a different report." So there. So then they send out the vendor who had hired that window guy. They send in them, and they said, "Well, we're here to clean the windows." I said, "All right, that's great. Clean the windows."
Clean the windows.
Clean the windows. And so they get the report back, and I ask them again, "Can I get this report?" They're denying the windows again. And I said, "Well, can I get the report?" "Nope, it's work product." So I got that, and it's funny because so we have functional damage, which was the seals that shrunk from the heat and snapped. Yeah. And then we had cosmetic damage, which was oxidation to the aluminum frames. And their vendor says, "Oh, there was damage to the seals, but that's functional. We're only here to address cosmetic damages."
They went opposite.
And there are no cosmetic damages. So the insurance company says, "Well, there's no damages to that." So it's just
that's another thing. We're dealing with so much of that where they'll send a vendor out to be like, we're sending the vendor out for like the floor. We'll do the other one that we're talking about. They send a vendor out to do the floor. Where the question is it the continuation of the floor need to be done in order to make it uniform? And so they send the vendor, and I'm like, "What did they tell you to do?" "They just asked me if I could fix the floor. I only need to fix this one part that's broken." I'm like, "No, the question is the like when you fix that floor, will it look the same as the rest of the floors?" And he's like, "Well, that's not really."
That's not the question. Well, that's not the question they asked him. Like Chris knows this, and especially Rachel, because she helped so many people through Tugboat. So often when a carrier is sending out an expert, we'll push someone to say, what is that assignment actually say? What are they there to find out? Because so often what they're there to find out, what they were assigned to do, has nothing to do with what's in dispute, right? They're there to determine whether or not these are floors.
Yeah, that's what Cody's saying. Like they're saying, well, we sent out an expert. The expert said there's no damage, but what the expert really said was there's no cosmetic damage. They just said there's no damage.
Yeah.
When I worked for the carrier, I had to request authority to engage an engineer. Let's just say that it's an engineer. Most times it is. And I had to include what all I was part of the investigation. Like what am I sending them for? Why am I sending them? What do I expect them to tell me? And yes or no, like everything. Is it repairable? Is it damaged because of the wind? Is it like all those things? And if I didn't have all those I's dotted and T's crossed, authority was not provided to engage the engineer.
Which is so interesting. Like the carrier that we're talking about, you know this, Rachel.
I know.
We're talking about the same carrier. And we know on that assignment, because we've talked to the vendor, that he had no clue why he was there. I just talked to a new supervisor on that claim, and she had no idea why they were sent either. Like she couldn't find it in the notes as to why.
Same carrier sent an engineer to check concrete damage on another one.
Yeah.
The engineer gets there, and I'm like, "What is your assignment?" He's like, "I don't even know why I'm here." He flew there from another state. And he's like, I'm just supposed to look at the wall. I'm like, look at the wall.
Okay, we're getting deep into time here. I want Cody to see.
I want to get to the next part.
Yeah, I want Cody to see what I had brought up right before. So, Cody, this is an email a public adjuster that works for Waypoint just got from a carrier, and I want you to read this and tell me if anything sticks out to you, first of all.
Okay, so they're reducing it for the co-insurance here. Wow. $500 per square foot, that equals 1.233 at a minimum of 80% for the dwelling. This is a residential?
It's a residential.
Condo.
That's the important part is it says unit right
Yeah.
there. So I'll just give it away because I think this is so funny. This is a townhouse. The carrier has the CCNRs.
Mm-hmm.
If the adjuster just read them, he would know the policy only covers the paint in. It doesn't cover rebuilding hardly anything at that house other than, again, the paint in at that house. But this is a letter that homeowner would have gotten
Wow.
saying, "Oh, you only get $9,000 of this $60,000 because of
Ultimately, if you're watching right now, what coinsurance is that your home has to be insured up to at least 80 or 90, whatever it says in the policy, percent of the value of the home. So right here, it's saying that in order to be insured at 80% of the value of your home, it's $986,800. And what the funny part is that they're considering the value of the full home, like the structure of the home, and they don't own the structure of the home.
Mhm.
They're using this as a way to minimize their coverage. When this happens in a policy, when this happens in a situation, the carrier then does not have to pay the full amount of the claim if they're underinsured. And so that's what they're trying to say is we only have to pay $9,000 of your $60,000 because you're underinsured.
And the reason for that is if your house is worth $1 million and you are only paying $200,000 worth of insurance, then you've been way underpaying on your premiums this whole time and therefore weren't insuring the loss properly. And so proportionally, any damage that you have is now going to be reduced by that 80%. So Chris just explained really well why in this instance they had the appropriate amount of insurance because they only have coverage for the interior fixtures essentially and paint and carpet and things like that. There's another funny thing about this email too. I have yet to see any insurance company, except in this instance when it would harm an insured, just out and admit that the rebuild cost is $500 per square foot, even though it's probably higher than that in the Palisades. But most
every
of them,
carrier's at 300, 350. They say.
yeah, every adjuster is actually writing estimates at $350 per square foot. And in this instance, finally, when it would actually help the insured to have that lower limit applied to a co-insurance, they're like, well, obviously it would cost $500 per square foot to rebuild your house. So let's just use that number for your co-insurance penalty.
Well, yeah, I mean, my issue on that was the $500 per square foot, regardless if that's even a structure, a custom structure. That's really high. You're right. We're coming in with the contractors that we're working with are $350 a square foot. That includes exterior, everything. So when you say that they're only for the paint end, what about the floors and the ceiling? So I'm dealing with one right now, and it's kind of an odd CCNR. And CCs, they're all over the place. I've seen CCNRs that say we cover everything on the interior, including upgrades. Mm-hmm. And I've seen them where they say we cover nothing from the studs in, right? Yep. So that means a drywall, everything. I have one right now where they cover the bare walls, mm-hmm. finished floor, if it's not upgraded, and the bare ceiling, and then everything else is on the insured. And it's really funny. They had a loss. They have CCNRs. They have a master policy that should be covering the floors, the bare walls, and the exterior. So the HOA said that we're not putting in a claim. We're not liable for anything. Then they fixed the roof and charged my client to fix the roof that he doesn't even own, right? And then he had his own personal insurance, and they denied it because there might be coverage on the master policy. And if there is, we don't know. So I have both these. I have the master policy carrier and the unit owner occupier carrier pointing fingers at each other. So it's funny. We were for a year and 2 months, we were trying to get one of them to pay. And finally, we just filed a lawsuit. Within 2 weeks, we got an inspection, and we're starting to move this thing forward. Mm-hmm. But looking at this that's what's shocking me is applying co-insurance at $500 per square foot. Who in their right mind would have a condo insured for $1.23 million?
I know.
You don't owe anything in it. You know.
Yeah, it's just hilarious. The funny thing to me is like, obviously it's wrong. We'll be able to point out to the adjuster it's wrong. But the funny, like, well, not the funny, like it's actually like the tragic thing about it is that if they didn't have any representation, right? People see their adjuster as their representative really often, right? Because it's their good neighbor, they're in good hands, whatever it is. And so if this person didn't have any representation, one, maybe they would just accept this $9,000 and be like, I guess this is all I have. Or two, would then be pushed to representation because their adjuster was so uneducated. This is a general adjuster, by the way. I don't have their name included in here, but under their title, it's called general adjuster. But because they weren't, trained enough to be able to identify that the co-insurance shouldn't be applied this way on this one. Now they were forced to go hire you, Cody, or another attorney, and you're going to take a contingency fee or a public adjuster because now this issue comes up. Like this misstep, whatever we want to call it, would cause, she already has a public adjuster, but would cause real harm to someone in the claims process. Like that's a huge mistake that either someone's going to accept it or now they're going to incur costs because a mistake like this happens.
Yeah, and it's not unreasonable to trust your insurance company. You should be able to trust your insurance company. If this person had trusted this and walked away with $9,070, I mean, you're right, that would be a tragedy. And yeah, I think that people should, this is going the right way. Always hire a public adjuster before, in my personal opinion, before an attorney. Attorneys kind of slow things down, in my opinion. I'll just be honest, I think we do. And we're expensive, right? I mean, attorneys aren't cheap. I think the work that we do is valuable, but, I do think that then people should at least, hire a public adjuster and see what happens. I used to give advice. I've been doing this a long time now. I think this is my 30th year. I think by the Grays, right? And I used to tell people, hey, put a claim in. They're going to pay you something, and there's lots of good adjusters out there, great people. And, this was a different time, though. This was 20 years ago. And, I'd say call me afterwards, and I'll come evaluate it, and we'll look at it. And I'd say, it went from, and through my experience, it was I could find some money, they would underpay them for about, they'd pay 70%, 60%. Then it just gradually went down. I think when I was still being a PA, I was seeing that they were denying claims and paying 20 to 30% of what's owed. It just kept declining. So yeah, the market's changing where it's unfortunate. I tell people, it's unfortunate you have to retain someone just to get what you're legally entitled to. But it's a great benefit to have somebody. Somebody said something to me the other day. He says it all the time, but I usually don't listen. But I did listen. He says, you wouldn't hire the IRS to do your taxes, would you? So why would you hire? Have you heard that? I've never heard it. I'm sure I know I've heard it. I just kind of one out the other. I'm like, yeah, just rhetoric, but it makes sense.
Yeah. I don't think I've heard the IRS analogy, but the one there's a guy on LinkedIn that often says, don't ask the person who you owe money how much you should be paying them. Or no, sorry, don't ask the person who owes you money how much they should be paying you.
How much they owe. Yeah, another thing that goes along the same lines is, 90% of a watermelon is better than 100% of a grape. And, I hate it when, some people, you'll see advertising on any kind of advocate, whether it's a construction consultant, a public adjuster, attorneys, we're going to maximize your payout. And that just sounds used car salesman sleazy. I think that a public adjuster, your duty is to protect the rights and ensure that the homeowner gets what they're legally entitled to. It's not about maximizing anything. There's an amount, a range that should be paid, and that's range is what will a contractor, an average contractor do the repairs for. And, it can go both ways. You got contractors. There is no limit on what contractors can charge. I tell people, hey, I'm a contractor. I could charge you $100,000 to install a door, which is usually what I tell people is I don't want to do it. Right. So, but when you're protecting, you're not maximizing. And maybe people see it different. I don't think you're maximizing anything. I think you're just getting what they're entitled to. People are paying premiums to get what they're entitled to. And so I think public adjusters are great for the, for the money and the knowledge and having stuff like this to educate people. It just really helps them out. But,
I learn a lot about where a PA or the attorney is coming from, because I've heard different people describe what our job is over the years. And there's the two camps pretty much. There's the maximize camp and there's the indemnify camp. Like, I'm just here to identify. Other people straight up tell people when they're pitching the claim, like, I'm here to maximize. I'm like, it's not really.
Yeah. So I had a client the other day that was talking to PAs and stuff, and they called me and were asking me if things were legal. And what I did is I put her up, and I said, hey, look, you need a place to stay. You're going to rent from your daughter. She's entitled to charge you. And she asked me, is that legal? And I said, it is legal. And as a matter of fact, I got the insurance company on, told them exactly what was happening and why it was happening. And, we're concerned, this and that. And, so I just think when you go with that, we're here to maximize and do things and get you the most money, it just comes across as used car salesman, right? But I don't think that, in working with you guys, I don't think that that's how you market it either. And I think that's why you have a good steady, here on this thing and everything else is, I don't think that that's the intent is to, I know I'm repeating myself a lot, and I think it's from being the youngest child. No one ever listens to me, so I repeat myself. My wife's breaking me of it, but yeah, no, I think that getting back on topic is, hiring people that are just there to protect your rights, and especially with the reservation of rights, they're protecting their rights. They have attorneys and adjusters, licensed adjusters, agents, contractors protecting their rights. I it's the same thing. I wish we could send reservation of rights letters to insurance companies. Saying,
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice if we could flip it on them?
Yeah,
and anytime we try to send them code, that it's pretty much. I mean, you were talking about sending in code 2071, which was essentially like, you have to give me the documents that I'm asking for if they were related to this claim, and they can ignore that. But to your point about maximize, yeah, I think the rhetoric that we use as advocates is really important, right? And a lot of times you can see the personality of the firm or the person or the tool that you're going to be using by the rhetoric that they're using. We try to be fairly careful about it at Tugboat, and I know we haven't been perfect. Certainly, even as we have a team that helps kind of build our advertisements, and they're not public adjusters, right? So they'll go write ad copy, and I'll have to take a look at it. And I've realized, like, I really have to take a look at it because it's not like it'll say anything particularly wrong. Sometimes, maybe sometimes it would, but if you say something the wrong way, you're conveying the wrong sentiment, even if it might be true. So if I was to say, I can maximize your claim, there might be truth in the fact that I can maximize your claim, but the sentiment that someone is left with is that I can make money off of this claim, right? I'm going to, I can make money off of this. And that sentiment just isn't the right way to enter into a claims process, right? It isn't to think about it that way. So yeah, I think the rhetoric, how we talk about, and we have to be so careful about it more and more, right? There's more than ever. I'm fairly active on LinkedIn and on social media, and there's a pretty active kind of friction between the messaging because carrier attorneys, defense attorneys for carriers are now really active on those platforms and advocating for carriers in a whole new way. It's not just the commercials and the rhetoric that they might put out there, but now there is the messaging from attorneys for insurance companies that will paint every issue that there is within the industry of insurance and problems with underwriting or premiums or whatever it is. And they'll say, this is all because of mass tort and attorneys and public adjusters. None of this would be an issue, essentially, if these people weren't there abusing the privilege that they have to operate in the industry at all. And certainly there are issues that are caused by public justice somewhere else, but it causes this reaction, and the reaction goes back and forth. It all gets tossed in to public adjusters on those platforms that sit back really aggressive, and maybe aggressive, but language like that, right? They feel like they have to match fire with fire, and so the rhetoric battle that ends up happening, and like I don't know, it's not a place that we want to end up in as advocates, right? We want to be the ones that are bringing more honesty and transparency to the table, and using phrases like maximize and things like that feels like we're not operating in that way that's above board. So yeah, I think there's certainly a lot of wisdom there.
When you're thinking about it too, it's like it's really a matter of like shifting perspective, because I mean the reality is that we are making money. We have to think about it as like part of it is like, oh, we are here to make money. This is how we are choosing to make our living, is by helping people in this way. And so it's just it's not like pretending like we're not there to make money either. It's the fact of the matter is like it's more for me. It became, because I used to say the maximize thing because that's how I was brought up in my firm, was to tell people that. And it was until someone else shared that with me that like, whoa, like why do you keep saying that? That it kind of like shook me, and it made me realize it changes the way that I'm now approaching the client. I have to like it's not being just like not being coy about like, oh, I'm not even making money, we're just here to like help you out. It's like, no, I am here to make money, but there's not going to be a lot of money here for either anybody, me or you, if we don't make these arguments. And this is why we're here. It's to, like,
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And, you know, just speaking about the job of a public adjuster is one thing, you know, should be conveyed to homeowners is a public adjuster isn't just here to protect the rights against the insurance company. A lot of my work comes from protecting insurance from contractors and vendors and other people that are, you know, trying to do things. And again, there's good and bad people everywhere, right? And probably in my house right now. I don't know. Earlier. So a lot of my time is spent, you know, helping insurers, you know, working with bad contractors that, you know, so just conveying that information that, you know, you have kind of a quasi fiduciary or a special relationship with these insureds to protect them, you know, and it sucks. Sometimes, you know, a contractor will call and get me to help their insured, and then there's a problem between the insured and the and the contractor.
Yeah, that's the hardest one, when you get the referral from the contractor, and then the client calls you, and the first thing they start complaining about is their contractor.
Yeah, and it's horrible, but you know, I have a duty to the insured, and I have to disclose that to the contractor, saying, look, I can't go after you, but I have to give my client the best advice. And, you know, I'll look and say, well, that's an invalid contract. There's no price. Unfortunately, you can get out of it. But why don't you let me try and fix the problem? What's going 99 times out of 100, you know, these things are based on miscommunication. You know, something happened, or maybe the project manager's not good, or, you know, then just sometimes people just don't get along. So a lot of them are getting resolved. But, you know, it's just something that I wanted to throw out there, that, you know, the public adjuster, you know, can help you with a lot more than just your claim. Oh, wow.
We got a baby there now. That's awesome. Danielle, I was going to let you finish up, actually. So share with us a little bit, because we haven't heard from you at all. You or your son share with us a little bit, because I know that you're one of the public adjusters for Waypoint, obviously, and you are working with various vendors across all those claims that you're working on, right? You're not
Yes.
Waypoint is not a firm that's tied to any one contractor, and
Right.
we're intentionally that way, right? We don't want to be, we don't want our loyalty to lie within a vendor. It's to the insured. And so though there are contractors that we like to work with, we're not loyal to any of them
Right.
in that way, or exclusively. So what are some of the dynamics that you're seeing at play between homeowners and their vendors? Are homeowners generally like happy with the work that's happening around these wildfires and the smoke claims that you're working? And if there is areas of friction, where are you seeing it most right now?
Well, in particular, I think communication is one of the biggest things between clients and their vendor. You know, they want to get phone calls back. They want emails. They want, you know, just the communication part is, if that's lacking, then that's where clients usually get upset and no longer want to work with that person. And, you know, like you guys were just saying, if a client is referred to us by a contractor, we still have, you know, our obligation and duty to help the client, not the contractor, you know? So, or if we refer a contractor out and the client's not happy, then we can refer them to another one if that's the case, you know? But there does come a point sometimes where, like in particular, if I know that a client's just never going to be happy, then I stop referring people to them, because it's just a waste of time, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess this is the final note. We're at our hour now, but the note I'll leave with on this theme of contractors and vendors, we were talking about rhetoric earlier, which is a form of communication, but we talk about communication probably more than anything else during these office hours, during most of our Tugboat content, how you communicate with your adjuster, how you communicate with your vendor is incredibly important. But for contractors out there, I know we actually have a lot of contractors that watch our content, maybe more than anybody else. If you want your clients to be happy, and especially if you're newer to claims, these jobs oftentimes are a lot more demanding communication wise than your standard remodels, right? The stress is so much higher. The stakes feel so much bigger for the people that are hiring you to do these jobs. And so my recommendation is just touch in on each of those claims as often as you can and be really honest with delays and communicate really clearly with people as to what's going on. It'll save you so much hassle. I can't tell you, Danielle is completely right. I can't tell you how many times clients have been frustrated, not at the quality of work that's happening at a house, and maybe the job is even moving forward, but they just have one concern and the contractor will not give them the time of day or won't call them back or whatever it might be. And so you can lose a job, lose out on a job, not get the good review, whatever it might be, just by not being on top of your communication. So that would be my last little bit of advice for all your contractors, mitigation companies, contents companies that are working on these wildfire claims. Call these clients back. Let them know why your estimate is taking 6 weeks to put together. Be honest with your timelines and deadlines. Chris pushed this week with us as a team during one of our calls, that just being really honest about actual deadlines and what's going to come up. So, and he is absolutely correct. You'll save a lot of face just by doing that. So we will finish up for this week. Cody, thanks for joining us. We'd love to have you again. It's just time for us to talk about claims. Sometimes people drop in and ask questions, and it's an opportunity for us to answer those, which is great.
That's the first time we haven't got questions yet.
Yeah. And other times it's just like this, where we'll talk about what's currently going on with the claims. And either way gives people a chance to watch this now or watch this later and learn a little bit about the process that we're all working through.
No, I think it's great. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Well, we will see you next week.
Thanks,
Hey, Cody,
guys.
Cody, I'm going to call you in 1 minute.
Okay.
Bye.
I'm here.
There we go.